Hello and welcome to Byjus Exam Prep IAS. Before we start with our today's analysis, we have two important announcements. The first is in reference to PTS 2023. Most of you would have given your preliminary mock exam which was conducted on 6th of November at 9:30 am. Now you would want to know what is your ranking, and you would also want to know how to approach a question, how to make use of the elimination process, what is the right strategy to approach a question. To help you further, what we will have is a detailed explanation which will go live on our YouTube channel as well as on the Byjus exam prep tomorrow at 5 p.m. So don't miss out and do watch us live tomorrow at 5 p.m. on YouTube to give you a detailed discussion about the full length test. The second announcement is in reference to the Telegram channel. Byjus exam prep IS is already on Telegram. If you have not joined, please do join so that you get all the current affairs related updates. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says the Uniform Civil Code. What is the context? Ahead of the Gujarat elections, we have the minister from the Gujarat, and we also have one of the union ministers who have said that they would want to implement the Uniform Civil Code. First up, we have to understand what is the meaning of Uniform Civil Code. As the very name denotes, there are three words. One is uniform, second happens to be civil, third happens to be the code. Let's divide them into three words. So it is uniform, civil and code. When it comes to laws of the country, we have what is called as the civil laws. Then what we also have is the criminal laws. When it comes to the criminal laws, what we have is the uniform criminal laws in the country. We have the Indian Penal Code, or let's say for example, we have the procedural law, which happens to be the CRPC. So when you consider these laws, they are uniform, which means to say it is equally applicable to all kinds of religions, peoples, castes, sex. All this does not come into picture if a heinous activity is committed or it is an illegal offense, irrespective of who the person is, whether he is rich or poor, he belongs to whichever religion, whichever caste, whichever sex. This criminal law applies uniformly across the length and the breadth of the country. But there are suitable changes that can also be introduced by the state governments when it comes to the criminal laws, because there are some aspects which are also placed under the concurrent list. Then what we have is the civil laws. When it comes to civil laws, what we are focusing is in specific reference to the personal laws. There are other civil laws, let's say for example the Contract Act. We also have the Transfer of Property Act. Our focus is primarily with respect to the personal laws. What are these personal laws? Let's say for example, we have inheritance or adoption or divorce or marriage. Is it uniform across all the religions? No, there are variations as well. So Uniform Civil Code basically looks at personal laws, where these personal laws have their own set of rules and regulations. They have their own laws as well. They are not uniform across the length and breadth of the country. So Uniform Civil Code basically means that it is a directive principle of the state policy, which is based in Article 44 of the Indian Constitution, which says that the state shall endeavor to secure for the citizens a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India. As of now, the criminal laws are same across the length and breadth of the country. But when it comes to the civil code, especially with respect to marriage, divorce, inheritance, adoption, personal laws, they are not the same. They vary from religion to religion. So a person, if he is a Hindu, he has a different kinds of laws when it comes to marriage, divorce. If it is a Muslim, he has a different kinds of laws. If he is a Christian, he has a different kind of law. So what we have is not uniform civil code when it comes to the personal laws. So the Uniform Civil Code is basically looking at bringing the personal laws under the ambit of the uniformity, which is why it is placed under the directive principles of the state policy. What we have to focus is on the Constituent Assembly debates. When we look into the Constituent Assembly debates, there were people who were supporting that yes, this should be under the fundamental rights. There were people who were opposing that this should not be under the fundamental rights. So in the Constituent Assembly, the matter had to be settled. So with a majority of 5:4, wherein the subcommittee on the fundamental rights headed by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel decided that securing a uniform civil code was not within the scope of the fundamental rights. So they rejected this particular proposal that uniform civil code should not be part of part 3 of the fundamental right. Instead, it should be placed in part 4, which is the directive principles of the state policy. So they went on to say that this is only a governance aspect. The state can push for it, but it will not be covered under the fundamental rights. There were many people who had also put out their opinion as well. We have one of the members, Naziruddin Ahmad from Bengal, who argued that certain civil laws in all communities were inseparably connected with the religious beliefs and practices. He felt that UCC would come in the way of Article 19 of the draft constitution. Now it is Article 25, which deals with the right to practice of religion, which guarantees the right to freedom of religion subject to public order, morality and health. What is his perspective? He goes on to say that this uniform civil code should not be implemented. Why? That is because we have one of the fundamental right, which is Article 25. Article 25 speaks about right to profess, practice, so on and so forth. If there is uniformity, it is directly in conflict with Article 25. So what we need to have is respect the religion perspective that is already placed under Article 25. So we cannot enforce uniform civil code, and it should just be a directive and not a fundamental right. If it is so, it will be a direct contradiction and a conflict, said member Naziruddin Ahmad. So he also said that whenever such a uniform civil code, if at all it is implemented in the near future, the community's consent will also have to be taken as well. So if the government is coming up with such a proposal, this proposal will have to be accepted by that particular community. It can be the Hindu community, it can be the Muslim community, it can be the Christian community, whosoever it is, they have to accept it, said member Asiruddin Ahmad. Then we have member KM Munshi, who rejected the notion that UCC would be against the freedom of religion, as the constitution allowed the government to make laws covering secular activities related to religious practices if they were intended for social reform. He advocated for the UCC, stating benefits such as promoting the unity of the nation and equality of the women. So what does he say? He says that when it comes to Article 25, there are already reasonable restrictions. Let's say, for example, if it is to do with public order, morality and health, the state would be able to interfere, also make changes as well, so that there is social reformation in the society. We have already given exceptions under Article 25. Similarly, if uniform civil code also steps into picture, it will be another exception. So state can interfere so that we are able to bring a social reform in the country. While we already have criminal laws for the entire country, irrespective of which religion, if a person commits a crime, it does not see whether he is a Muslim or a Christian or a Hindu, that person will be put behind bars for that particular crime. Similarly, religion does not matter if it is uniform throughout the country for a civil personal law. In that case, it will promote unity of the nation and equality, and that is what KM Munshi went on to say. These are some of the important points that you can go ahead and put it in your answers. Now the question is, what are the various arguments against the UCC? This article currently goes on to say that we have to look at three primary principles. One, it has been argued that while India does have uniformity in most criminal and civil matters like Criminal Procedure Code, Civil Procedure Code, Contract Act, states have made over 100 amendments to the CRPC and IPC, as well as several amendments to the civil laws. What do we understand by this? India is a country known for its diversity. India has myriad cultures as well. When we look at concurrent list, what we have in concurrent list is there are some criminal laws which can also be amended by the respective states. Let's say, for example, rape. Rape can have a penal provision, let's say hypothetically it is 10 years. But state can also make some amendments and they can say for rape it can also be 15 or 20 years. Similarly, number of states in India have taken up measures where rape laws are totally different. Why? Because it is placed under concurrent list. States would also be able to bring changes as well. So what this article currently goes on to say, that even if we have criminal laws, even if we have civil laws, since we have many states in India, each state in its own way have brought about amendments. So why impose uniformity when it comes to the personal laws? Even for the criminal laws, the punishment are different. Yes, we do have the punishment. It can be 10 years, it can be 11 years. Different states have their own amendments. So if it is not uniform in the criminal laws or in the civil laws, why bring it to the personal laws? So it is not uniform even at that level. States are bringing their own amendment. Why introduce personal laws amendment or make it uniform is the first major argument. The second argument is framers did not intend total uniformity, which is why personal laws were placed in entry 5 of the concurrent list, with the power to legislate being given to Parliament and the state assemblies. When you look into entry 5, what does it speak about? It speaks about marriage and divorce, it speaks about infants and minors, it speaks about adoption, wills, succession, joint family and partition, so on and so forth. The freedom fighters, while they were debating in the Constituent Assembly, they knew for the fact that since India is known for its diversity, states should be given the power, so is the Parliament. If the Parliament so decides to make a law and the state governments also so decide to make a law, this should be in the area of the concurrent list. So most of these aspects like joint family and partition, marriage and divorce were already placed in the concurrent list, which is why state governments have the power to bring in their own share of legislations as well. So they had a future plan. They knew about the diversity. So they knew for the fact that states will have to make their own amendments. While their future thinking is right, why are we igniting this very thought of uniformity across the length and breadth of the country? The third says all Hindus are not governed by a homogeneous personal law. Even after the enactment of the Hindu Code Bill, neither are Muslims and Christians under their personal laws. So within Hindus, there are different castes. In North India, for example, some communities may not marry their cousins. In South India, there are few people who marry their cousins. So there is a lot of diversity when it comes to culture as well. In Northeast part, you have certain tribal people where they marry amongst the cousins, which may not be there in other tribal groups. So what we have is endogamous relationship. So in this particular backdrop, if you're trying to infuse uniformity, that will not serve the purpose, are some of the arguments put down in this article. In fact, we have had the Supreme Court of India, which has looked into this Uniform Civil Code multiple times, and it has already passed the judgment that it is not for the Supreme Court to decide on the Uniform Civil Code, because this is the domain of the legislature. The legislature has to look into it and ultimately come out with the uniform civil code if they so desire. In number of judgments, it has already classified that in Jordan Diang and SS Chopra, the law relating to judicial separation, divorce and nullity of marriage is far from uniform. Surely the time has come for the complete reform of the law of the marriage and make a uniform law applicable to all people irrespective of religion or caste. We suggest that the time has come for the intervention of the legislature in these matters to provide for a uniform code of marriage. So Supreme Court has said that it is not our domain. It is for the legislature to decide. You come ahead, and in case there is any interpretation that we have to look at, we will look into it. The Supreme Court in various judgments has called for the implementation of the UCC in its Muhammad Ahmad vs Shahbano Begum judgment of 1985, where a divorced Muslim woman demanded maintenance from a former husband. The apex court, while deciding whether to give prevalence to the CRPC or to the Muslim personal law, called for the implementation of the UCC. So whenever there is a conflict, that should we go under the CRPC, we have one of the sections, which is section 125 of the CRPC, which speaks about maintenance for the wives. Then you also have the Muslim personal law as well. So on one side there is one law which says maintenance has to be given. On the other side, the personal law does not guarantee the maintenance. There is friction and conflict in this case. What should the Supreme Court decide? This is for the legislature to decide. Please ensure that there is uniformity of laws irrespective of religion, caste, sex, creed, all that. You have to come up with a uniform law, says the Supreme Court of India. The court also called on the government to implement the UCC in 1995 Sarla Mudgal judgment as well as in the Paulo Coutinho versus Maria Luciana Valentiana Pereira case in 2019. So the Supreme Court has said that we do expect the UCC to be implemented, but it is for the government, the legislature to decide. They have to make the laws and ultimately come up with it. We have the Law Commission that was appointed as well. The Law Commission was asked to look into this very idea of the Uniform Civil Code, but then the Law Commission, as of now, has said that the unified nation did not necessarily need the uniformity, adding that secularism could not contradict the plurality prevalent in the country. It based its arguments on three important fundamentals. First is on the principles of uniformity. Do we require a uniform civil code? The Law Commission said cultural diversity cannot be compromised to the extent that our urge for uniformity itself becomes a reason for the threat to the territorial integrity of the nation. A unified nation did not necessarily need to have uniformity. Efforts have to be made to reconcile our diversity with universal and indisputable arguments on the human rights. So it went on to say our cultural diversity has to be respected, and if this can lead to issues within the country, such arguments should not be supported, says the Law Commission. On secularism, it said the commission said secularism cannot contradict the plurality prevalent in the country. In fact, secularism has meaning only if it is assured the expression of differences within us, and ultimately, the only thing that it said was in terms of marriage, where the commission suggested that certain measures in marriage and divorce that should be uniformly accepted in personal laws of all religions. These amendments in personal laws, including the fixing of marriageable age for the boys and the girls at 18 years so that they are marrying as equals. This is primarily to remove the stereotype that wives must be younger than the husbands. These are some of the recommendations that have been given by the Law Commission as well. So, what is the stand of the government? The government will have to rethink about it. If they ever intend to come up with uniform civil code, they have to reconsider it. However, the other set of arguments is been covered in one of the videos, which is uniform civil code in our knowledge series. Kindly look into it so that you get the other side of the story as well. Now let's look into the next article. This article says helicopter accidents in October point to broader concerns. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. In October, as many as 13 people were killed in three different accidents that took place because of the helicopters. What are these incidents? On October 5th, an army aviation pilot was killed after a cheetah helicopter crashed near Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh. On October 18th, a commercial chopper ferrying pilgrims from Kedarnath crashed, killing all 7 on board. On October 21st, a military helicopter crashed, killing all the 5 personnel on board in the Upper Siang district of Arunachal Pradesh. Now the question is, why do we have these accidents taking place? There have been some civilian casualties, and more so, it is more to do with defense casualties. If we look into the statistics goes on to say Uttarakhand, where the latest accident involving a commercial copter took place, is a hotbed for chopper accidents. A conservative estimate based on incident reports by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation shows at least 9 helicopters, many of them ferrying pilgrims inside the state, met with accident between 1990 to 2019. More than 150 people, including the pilots, the crew and passengers, lost their lives in accident involving commercial helicopters between 1990 to 2019. Between 1998 and 2021, 124 military personnel were killed in accident involving defense helicopters. This clearly goes on to depict what we have is increasing cases of helicopters accidents that are taking place, leading to civilian casualties as well as the army personnel getting killed. Whenever there is an accident, it can be an aircraft or it can be a helicopter. Which authority investigates it? Remember, what we have is called as the Aircraft Accident Investigation Board. It is this body which will investigate what went wrong with this incident and ultimately report it to the government of India. This can also be important from the preliminary examination point of view. So remember, we have Aircraft Accident Investigation Board. It is this board which will investigate what was the cause of the accident. Now the question is, what are the reasons as to why there have been increasing cases of helicopter accidents? When you look into this article, the article actually goes on to give a chart for us. It says about 40% is because of the pilot error. So over 40% of the commercial helicopter accidents are due to the pilot error. There is certainly an issue with pilots and the technicians not getting requisite amount of training. They might not have been given an amount of training that is required for the commercial pilot, and at the same time there might be increased workload as well. They might not have understood the technological demands as well. This might have led to the pilot not understanding the situational crisis at that particular juncture, and this is what is leading to the helicopter accidents. So nearly 40% of the helicopter accidents is because of the pilot error. It might be because of the workload of the pilot, it might be because he might have not understood the technology, and because he might have not received enough training. This might result in pilot error. The second, that is 19%, is because of the harsh weather. Harsh weather is suspected in at least 19% of the accidents. This is because flying in the inclement weather and hilly region is quite risky. There are visibility issues as well, and errors of judgment because of stress, spatial disorientation, and lack of situational awareness could have led to the accidents. So the second reason, about 19%, is because of the harsh weather. Third is to do with improper maintenance. Every now and then, whenever it is a helicopter, what it will require is the periodic maintenance. So there'll be wear and tear as well. Some equipments will have to be removed, it has to be replaced. If this is not done on a periodic basis, if it is not done on a periodic basis by the technicians, this can also lead to accidents. The next is because of the cable hit, which is about 9%. What is this cable hit? Let's say, for example, in the hilly regions, the pilots will not be able to see properly. There is visibility issue as well. Let's say from one pole to another, there is a wire that is going, or from one mountain peak to another mountain peak, let's say there is a wire that is going. These blades of the helicopters, because the pilot is not able to see it, can hit this particular cable, and this will also lead to accidents as well. So these cables are often not marked with the warning signs. They are not visible from a distance, and because of the poor weather conditions, this is another major reason for the accident. Then we also have the power loss, spatial disorientation, bird strike, which is about 1%, is also the reason for the accident. Because of such accidents, there are a couple of concerns this throws up to. What is it? First happens to be the military personnel. Because of such accidents, we have lost number of military personnel. We are sacrificing our soldiers by operating these helicopters as well. There have been some helicopters which should not ideally be used as well. Why? Because they are antique pieces. They have been bought by India, let's say in 1960s or 1970s. Its period might have been extended time after time, because we have been using these antique pieces which should not have been used in the first place. So we continue to use them, and unfortunately we are losing our military personnel. So first is the loss of the human lives. Second is with respect to the economic loss. Whenever there is a helicopter that goes into the crash or into the accidents, what it also means is that we are losing an helicopter. This basically means it's an economic loss for the country and for the government of India. So what we have to do going forward is to make sure that there is periodic maintenance once and for all. If there is an antique piece whose time period has been extended periodically, this should be immediately be removed from flying, and ultimately new helicopters will have to be procured by the government of India. So what are the measures that we have to take going forward? We have to update the equipment. Let's say for example, we have one of the new helicopters. This helicopter will require the software as well as the hardware. So periodic updation of the software and the hardware will have to be taken into picture. So every helicopter comes with a service manual. So if they require software update, this has to be done on a periodic basis. If they require a hardware update where they have to replace one with another new equipment, that should also be taken into picture. Second is about proper training. We did discuss most of it is because of the pilot errors. So whenever they're training a pilot, they should teach him with all situational awareness as well. So the second important factor is providing proper training to the pilot. The third is with respect to the maintenance as well. There'll be wear and tear over a period of time. The helicopter operators will have to be aware. They have to comply with all the manufacturer's maintenance manual and procedure. And for the safety flying, operators should be able to implement a robust quality assurance program with respect to manuals, service bulletins, procedures, so on and so forth. If we are able to start with all these and implement them, we would be able to combat or minimize these helicopter accidents. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, bring back old pension scheme, government employees right to cabinet secretary. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. We have group of employees of the central government who have now written to the cabinet secretary. What is their concern? They go on to say, earlier what we had is the old pension scheme or the defined pension benefit scheme. This was replaced by a new scheme called as the national pension scheme. So they go on to say they are not happy with this national pension scheme. They want is the old pension scheme or the defined pension benefit scheme. So they are asking and they have written to the cabinet secretary for the replacement of the now national pension scheme with the earlier scheme. Let us try and understand what is this earlier scheme, what is this national pension scheme, why are they voicing their opinion against this national pension scheme. First, we have to understand the meaning of old pension scheme. Under the old pension scheme or the defined pension benefit scheme, assured lifelong income post retirement usually equivalent to 50% of the lost on salary. Government bears the expenditure incurred on the pension. What do you mean by old pension scheme? Let's say for example at the end of the retirement, let's say the retirement age is about 60 years. At the age of 60 years, let's say the person is drawing a salary of about 1 lakh. So this person was drawing a salary of about 1 lakh. So he retires at the age of 60 years. Once he retires, what will be the pension that this particular person will receive? He will receive a pension of 50,000. This means if his last on salary is 1 lakh, he will receive 50% of it, which is 50,000. If it is 2 lakh, he would receive about 1 lakh as the pension. And if he passes away, or it is the wife who passes away, whosoever is working in the government of India, the spouse will receive at least 50% from that particular pension. And the added advantage of this OPS basically is that these employees need not have to contribute to the pension. So if we are speaking about pension, the earlier old pension scheme basically was implemented up until Jan 1st 2004. So anyone who joined before Jan 1st 2004 to the central government were getting what is called as the old pension scheme. So the government was providing them the pension. These employees need not have to contribute anything to the pension fund. So anyone who joined the central government before Jan 1st 2004 were entitled to pension under the old pension scheme. But anyone who joined the central government after Jan 1st 2004 are basically getting what is called as the national pension scheme. The national pension scheme is applicable to all new recruits joining central government service except the armed forces from April 1 2004 is a participatory scheme where employees contribute to the pension corpus from their salaries with matching contribution from the government, and it is market linked. What do we understand by this? Let's say for example, there is a person who is getting about 1 lakh. This is a person who is drawing a salary of 1 lakh. So 10,000 rupees, about 10%, will be taken from this particular person's salary. This will be invested in one of the corpus fund, which will be his pension fund. The similar amount will also be added by the central government, which is another 10,000, and all this will be given after his retirement. So in this, there is employee contribution. In the earlier process, there is no employee contribution. Every responsibility was on the government. Here it is 10,000 that this person is adding. Equivalent amount is even added by the government. But at the end of 60 years or at the end of retirement, this person will get all that he has saved of his 10% with the government contribution. This will put up in a corpus and this will be given as the pension. So what is the concern of the people who are getting the NPS? They go on to say that under the NPS, the official with a basic pay of 30,500 received 2,417 as monthly pension, as against 15,250 pension he would have been given under the OPS. Another official with a basic pay of 34,300 received 2,506 as monthly pension after more than 15 years of service, whereas under the OPS he would have been entitled to about 17,150 as the pension. So do you see the difference here? Under the NPS he is getting just 2,500, close to 2,500, but under the old scheme he was getting about 15,250 with this basic pay amount, which is why these people who are now drawing the pension are not happy about it. They're not happy with the national pension scheme. All they want is to go back to the OPS. And when it comes to OPS, also remember, not every person would be given the pension. He should have served the government of India for at least 10 years of service. And when it comes to the OPS or the old pension scheme, there was dearness allowance that was also given, which may not be given in the national pension scheme. So comparatively for the employees, the advantage happens to be in the old pension scheme. But there are some disadvantages that also happens with the old pension scheme for the government. What are these disadvantages? Let's say for example, earlier the employee need not have to invest anything. The entire responsibility was under the central government. So if the central government is spending so much, it is also mean that the taxpayer is spending for all these employees. The government may not have enough amount of money as well. In order to make sure that the government does not spend too much into the pensions, that is why NPS was introduced. Another factor is when you look at countries like Greece, or for example many South American countries as well, these had a lot of pension that they had to pay to their people who were working for the government. So where are they now going? When there is government extravagance, when the government is spending too much on the pension, it will always hit the government down the lane. But from the employees perspective, they would have worked for the government of India, they would have worked for the respective state governments, they should be taken care by the government as well. But now with the NPS, all that they are getting is very minimal pension scheme, and this basically means they would not be able to take care of themselves. Let's say if they are in Delhi or in Mumbai or in Bangalore, where the cost of living is comparatively very high, how will they able to live after 60 years when they are not drawing their salary? All that they have to live is on the pension are some of the issues. So going forward, what they are saying is that they want to go back to the OPS, and as a result they have written the letter to the cabinet secretary to discuss it with the government of India. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says camera traps renew hope for snow leopard in Kashmir. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. When we speak about snow leopard, it is also called as the mountain ghost. Where is it present in India? When you consider the geographical presence of the snow leopard, it is present in the western Himalayas, where it is present in the state of Himachal Pradesh. It is present in the state of Uttarakhand. It is also present in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Added to it, it is also present in the eastern Himalayas as well, where one, it is in Sikkim. It is also present in Arunachal Pradesh. This can be very important from the preliminary examination point of view. What is the IUCN status of the snow leopard? The IUCN status happens to be vulnerable. It is also present in the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, and it is also listed on Appendix of the Convention on the International Trade of Endangered Species in Appendix 1 of the CITES as well. This is important from the preliminary examination point of view. Why are the snow leopards important? These snow leopards play a significant role in the environment. They are the top predators. They also indicate the health of the high altitude habitat as well. If the snow leopards thrive, so will other countless species thrive in that particular region. So it is very important when it comes to the environment. But there are major threats to do with the snow leopards. What are those? One is that this snow leopard is hunted for its skin. So the first major threat is the hunting. Second is the habitat destruction that happens. When it comes to this particular region, it has to be safeguarded, but then industrial urbanization that takes place, then there is deforestation that takes place, and as a result, the destruction of the habitat because of the infrastructural development is the second major concern. The third happens to be the global warming. Fourth happens to be human animal conflict. These are some of the issues to do with the snow leopards. In order to overcome all these issues, we have the Government of India and respective state governments who have taken number of measures. We have the Government of India, which has identified snow leopard as a flagship species for all the high altitude Himalayas. Then we have India, which is also party to the global snow leopard and ecosystem protection program. Then we have the Indian government, which launched the community volunteer program called as Himal Sanrakshak to protect the snow leopards. And we have the Government of India, which has been conserving the leopard and its habitat through the project Snow Leopard. These are some of the initiatives that have been taken by the Government of India, and it is also actively speaking to the local communities as well in order to prevent the human animal conflict. The present article goes on to say that camera traps have renewed the hope for the snow leopard in Kashmir. So the camera trapping exercises by researchers from National Conservation Foundation partnering with Jammu Kashmir's Department of Wildlife Protection also raised hopes for other important and rare species such as Asiatic ibex, brown bear, Kashmir musk deer in the upper reaches of the northern part of India. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says AnSI builds tribal hut replicas to help preserve promote unique heritage. The article here is speaking primarily about certain tribal groups. It also gives us information about their huts as well. So the first important factor from the preliminary examination point of view is remember this term called as chadda. So what is chadda? The traditional Jarawa hut is called as a chadda. So on the basis of size and number of dwellers, there are different kinds of chaddas. Basically, you have the community huts, then you also have permanent huts, you have semi-permanent huts, temporary huts, so on and so forth. So chadda basically is the Jarawa hut. When we look into Andaman and Nicobar, we have different kinds of tribes. One is Orange, Ongolese, Sentinelese, Champins, and when we have Little Andaman, what we have is the Jarawa tribe. The Jarawa tribe are in the Little Andaman. Then we have another tribal group called as the Dorla. Dorla happens to be a tribal community which lives in the state of Chhattisgarh. So remember, this is a tribal group. Where is it present? It lives in the state of Chhattisgarh, especially in the Bastar area of central India. So they are mainly found in Dantewada, Bijapur district of the present day Chhattisgarh. Then we have Betta Kuruba, which is also mentioned under this article. Betta basically means it's mountain, and Kuruba are nothing but shepherd. So those shepherds who live in the mountains are called as the Betta Kurubas. Where do they live? They live in the Nilgiris. They live in the districts of Mysore, Chamrajnagar, Kodagu district, so on and so forth, and they have been given the ST tag by the Union government. So Betta Kuruba happens to be one of the tribal group from where? From the state of Karnataka. And Dorla happens to be one of the tribal groups from the state of Chhattisgarh. And Myabna or Monum happens to be a beauty of the Kasi culture. It basically consists of three upright stones as you can see from the image, and you will also have one flat table stone in the front. So this is from the state of Meghalaya, and this is a practice that has been taking place in the Kasi culture. These are some of the important aspects covered in this article, and this can be very important from the preliminary examination point of view. Now let's look into the next article. This article says Indian black honeybee is a Western Ghats discovery. So a new species of endemic honeybee has been discovered in the Western Ghats. The new species has been named as Apix carinjondian and given the Indian common name Indian black honeybee. So remember, Apix carinjondian happens to be a honeybee. Where was it recently discovered? It was discovered in Western Ghats. Where is the distribution? The distribution of Apix carinjondian ranges from central Western Ghats and Nilgiris to the southern Western Ghats, covering the states of Goa, Karnataka, Kerala and Tamil Nadu. What is the significance of this honeybee? Basically, they would be able to produce higher quantities of honey, which is much thicker in consistency, and this also opens new avenues for the honey production. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. Uniform civil code is neither necessary nor desirable. Do you agree? Substantiate. Next question. Examine the most common causes of helicopter crashes and suggest preventive measures. So please write all your answers on the comment section, peer review, and do give positive feedback to your friends' answers. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.